Live here. Hello, my friends. Brian King, the Mindset King here. I'm with my good friend, Jane Stewart. I call you the Confidence Queen. I don't know if you have a moniker that you use.
That is well said. You summarized it very well.
Well,
That is
go for it. And just because she's a queen doesn't mean she cannot also work with kings. Okay, she does that. She does that in spades. So the reason Jane and I are talking is I posted this morning asking people what did they want to learn this week. And Jane was one of the people that responded. And interestingly enough, this is a topic that I see coming up a lot with the couples that I work with, where one has really taken on the entrepreneurial, the self-improvement journey, only to find a spouse that doesn't want to come along for the ride. And it creates a lot of conflict. Or I see a situation where, and this is what we're going to be talking about, Jane, where you look to other family members, your mom's approval, for dad to be proud of you, for your siblings to endorse your endeavors, and then they poop all over it to various degrees because they're stuck, not because your idea is bad. And one of the many conflicts that arises is that you still want these people in your life, but you need some boundaries so that they don't get their negative ick on you and soil your ambitions. Am I getting this right, Jane?
You've got it right. Nailed it to the T.
So can you give me the scenario that led to you posing this concern in the first place?
The story is I spent some time with a couple of good friends on the weekend. I'm going to tell the story. And their conversations, our car conversations, and Dairy Queen conversations, were about family and how these two women have their own business. They have a marriage, they have kids, and they are excited about it. They've had business for a while, but their family is not excited at all. And they're frustrated because their family has both their families have complex depression and, there's some alcoholism. There's just behavior that they have poured every ounce of themselves into, supporting and wanting and encouraging change for their family or parents, and it's not happening. And they also don't get the support back for their business. And so it's very frustrating because they feel that they love them, they want change for them, but they won't change and they don't want to cut them off. They want to still have them in their life. So it's like, what do I do, Jane? And we just talked about it. I don't have solutions because, I have suggestions, but that has to be for each individual. So that was the discussion in the car.
I would love to hear the suggestions you gave them.
Well, coming from having lived it, my experience was to understand my role as I was a great mother to everybody. So I learned in the past, or discovered, I did some work with a therapist, and I was the family mother. And so by that, I was taking care of everybody, trying to fix, trying to prop, and running out of my own energy. And then tons of boundaries were being just overstepped. And I felt sad, and I did feel depressed for a short term, and very frustrated. And I wanted to say, forget this, I'm done with my family. But the suggestion was that I find some boundaries, which was, instead of reacting by motherly and fixing, that I accept, release it. And the boundaries I could determine how much time I wanted to spend with them. And that was huge for me. It didn't mean I cut them out of my life. And so that's exactly what I have done. Now, I will tell you that it's not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better feeling than it was, say, 5 years ago.
When you're dealing with attachment, you're kind of moving along this continuum of vulnerability. And sometimes you let yourself be a little bit more open because of how connected you feel to these people. And they step on you a little bit and it hurts. And then you pull back and you're a little bit more guarded. So there's this dance, there's this testing that we continue to go along with. So it's not like you set a boundary and it's static. boundaries can be pretty fluid, but being raised in a Midwestern dysfunctional family, having gone through all the stuff we've gone through, when my father learned I wanted to go into social work, my dad's a tradesman. He was raised by a tradesman who emphasized, you got to work with your hands or you're useless. You got to have a skill. So when my dad heard I wanted to go into social work, I might as well have told him I was going to go be a gigolo or a male stripper. He thought that there was no value or virtue to what I was doing. What are you going to do with that? Who's going to pay for that? He was pissed. If it wasn't for the fact that my mom handled the money, my college would not have been paid for. Who knows what I'd be doing? And one thing I had to learn, and this goes for business as well as personal, is get out of the convincing business. The more you try and talk people into something, when they've decided that their take on the world is the correct one, you're always going to be disappointed. Like I said, my dad's lens, he was raised in the 50s, totally different era. And now we're in the digital age. My dad has a smartphone. He usually has it on silent. He doesn't know how to text. He's not interested in email or the internet. He's probably never opened a web browser. What am I going to be able to talk this man into? That's not his world. And it's really, really important to understand that. And my mom, I love her to pieces. She's always been there for me, but she's a martyr. She's always suffering. She's usually the biggest victim in the room. And I've given up trying to empower her to not be the victim because she is so embedded in this mindset. So I playfully create boundaries with her. She'll call me up, because they're retired now, so the littlest thing to her is a crisis because she has little to compare it to. So she'll call me up and say, I have a crisis. And I'll say, I'm not interested. I don't do drama. Now, if you want to talk about a solution, bring it home and calm down a little bit. I'm happy to have that conversation with you. But on my list of to-dos today, being dramatic is not on it. So setting those boundaries in terms of, it's not I participate in your madness or I nurture my growth. It's how can we coexist without me sinking into the swamp of your mindset. And you got to come right out and say, this is the conversation I'm willing to have with you.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah, one funny thing that I hear a lot from other people I know that have parent issues. Sometimes the parent, they'll go and talk to the parent or they'll see them in person and immediately it's the problems. Oh, I'm so glad you came by. I want to talk to you about this sibling or that sibling or this person ticked me off. And the response from them is, I'm fine. How are you?
It's so true.
So sometimes you just got to kind of snap them out of it because they don't realize that's where they go. Because they spend all that time in their doldrums and just feeling sorry for themselves. And you are not obligated to participate because they're family.
Yep, that's really interesting because my two friends are struggling with just sticking to that, I'm fine, how are you, and letting it hang there. And part of what they also struggle with is, I live in a small town, so it's very easy to, they're 10 minutes away or 5 minutes away, their parents. And so they're struggling with, well, how long simple things, because it's becoming a snowball. How long do I visit for? Like as soon as I walk in the door, and this is the kind of thing is that, how do you, I told them, play the scenario out, think of it as a movie. I know I simplify things because I'm not a therapist. So I'm being a friend at this point. And I said, put it into a movie context, which is play the scene out before you go. And the odds are you're more prepared. And I encourage them to put a time limit on it and find a happy excuse. So not an excuse that hurts people, because what our parents are doing is simply sometimes only what they know best. They've raised it. So a happy excuse would be, well, I got to go because grocery shopping is going to happen. Have a great day. So there's a scenario, as far as I'm concerned, you can prepare yourself when you walk through that door a little more. And eventually it becomes second nature. That movie preparation or that scene preparation, in my opinion, is just second nature. But that's something that I encourage them to do just to get started.
Oh yeah, it's a rehearsal. It's wonderful. And athletes do that, before they go out on the court. This is how I'm going to make my shot. This is the play I have to remember. The coach says that we're going to do. Rehearsal is helpful in so many different scenarios. And as a parent, it's helpful if you hear your kid has done something and you want an alternative to killing them. You need to rehearse how you're going to have the difficult conversation. So you get your words out, you're able to speak coherently without steam coming out of your ears. All that's very important. And I want to acknowledge something. One of our viewers, Dave Canyon, awesome guy. He said there are plenty of guys that are good with their hands and handy tradesmen on the internet. Let me tell you, my house would be falling apart around me without the guy that fixes the garage door, the guy that does the plumbing, the one that checks the AC. These guys are wonderful. What I was addressing was my dad's belief that nothing else mattered.
Yeah.
That's the only skill that has value. Yeah, absolutely. I've got 10 thumbs practically. I can't grow anything without it dying in the first week. I'm just not good with the hands. So I just wanted to acknowledge what Dave said. So, setting the boundaries, what do you think people need in order to be confident enough to set those boundaries to begin with? Because some people are afraid to set the boundary, because if you change the script, there's a lot of pushback from family, and they can even threaten you with abandonment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I guess I just can't talk to you anymore because you don't understand, you don't care, and they're drawing their line in the sand where you put up with me as I am, or goodbye.
I think sometimes we have to ask for help. If it becomes, it's the same thing I go back to, that if it's becoming a conversation we're having with friends and not actioning it, then I do believe in getting the right support. Because friends are great, but sometimes a professional can just simply turn it. And I think there's a bit of misconception with going to a professional. It could be, your doctor even. It could even be like a just therapist. It doesn't have to be a psychiatrist. But the thing is, there's a misconception. It's like, how long is it going to take? A year? I'm like, no. You're going. It's probably very simple, these steps. So it's understanding that if you're replaying it and not taking action on anything, then you're stuck yourself. So that family thing isn't about, you can only help yourself in that zone. So if you're not moving forward, get the professional help, or reach out to somebody, for example, yourself, that could easily have some simple tools and tasks like to move forward. And then it's focusing on what you can change, which is only yourself. And it's sort of like this is like a common sense recipe for life, but let me tell you, I know that sometimes being so close to it, it's difficult to do it on my own. And so that's why I encourage people, as much as we love our family and friends for support, and I can encourage my friends, but you really have to say, what can I change, and focus your energy into that, because something shifts. You have more self-confidence in yourself. And so then all the conversations your good friends have had with you about how to make those changes and different boundaries are less complicated. It's way easier, because there's okay, I can do this. I'm prepared. I've had simple discussions. And then it's creating that action plan. And it's a matter of wanting to shift the change from the old, because you're really doing what your parents are doing. If you want change, sorry about the tough luck, then don't complain about your parents not changing if you can't pause and do it yourself. So the self-confidence is important.
And one of the things, there's so many wonderful things in what you just said. Having somebody to give you that objective third-party point of view. There's a lot to be said for having somebody who can spot your blind spots. I don't care how educated you are or how enlightened you believe yourself to be. You are still subject to denial, rationalization, excuses, all that stuff, because our ego likes to protect itself from pain. So when things come up, your brain starts doing these jumping jacks in order to protect you. And a lot of times you miss it. You miss it entirely, or it takes you a while to figure it out once the threat has diminished a little bit. But having, like you said, a doctor, a therapist, a coach, the friend who always tells you the way it is,
yeah,
who can say,
yeah.
look, here's what you're missing. Here's where you got your head up your backside. And having somebody show that to you can really expedite your growth.
Absolutely.
It's not
like a
waiting. Yeah, because it's not waiting for your brain to catch up. And sometimes you're right there on the border of seeing it and continuing to keep it in hiding. And it's because you're not aware of it that it continues to get in your way.
Yep,
so that whole idea of people, well, I'm going to do it myself. I have to figure it out myself. Well, you go ahead and take an eternity to grow into the person you want to be. You're welcome to be stubborn and isolationist like that while everybody else is beating your butt in the marketplace because they're doing the work. They've got a team, they've got a coach, and they're moving forward. Now, another thing that you point out, which is important, is the more you're trying to convert a small group of people, even family, it tells me you probably don't have a lot of support anywhere else. You're putting too much in the family basket. It's easier to take risks at fracturing relationships or rebuilding them if you feel supported someplace else. So if you've got, again, a professional that's got your back, you've got good friends that accept you more as you are, they're encouraging you, they're actually the ones you're looking for. They're behind you. They see your vision. They believe in your capacity to grow and succeed. Lean on them a little bit when you want to go and set these boundaries with family. Because if you start to fall because you've been injured, they'll catch you. They'll support you.
Yeah, it's really important.
That's something else that you really have to have.
I agree. I didn't bring up this point, which is my one friend in particular, it's very sad for her right now. And I said, that's normal. That means that you're shifting something. Don't run from, I mean, she knows it's a temporary sadness, but it's okay to be sad. It's keep the dialogue open. And we even talked about grieving because she feels like it's letting go of, it is tough. That's normal. I think, and I said, well, that's very normal. If we don't keep the dialogue open with mentors, coaches, or professionals, that's where you get in your own head. You're like, I'm sad, I'm grieving, this is wrong. And then you're simply just carrying on the family tradition of doing nothing about nothing. And so it is difficult to make those shifts, but it's like you feel like Superwoman or Superman because you've done something that makes you feel it's not going to solve it's not going to feel fantastic. It's going to feel, lighter. And it's hard to explain until you're on the other side of it. It's going to feel that there's a sense of, okay, this was very negative solutions. And now I have solutions that are moving me forward at a better pace, at just different, and you become more actionable all over your life, which is a very good thing. So that's really, it does matter to feel that stuff. It matters what you do with it though, too.
Yeah, and if you're attached to somebody, you're going to grieve when that attachment changes. And there feels this letting go, feels like a loss because it is. You're losing that fantasy of what if things could be better? What if I could have the relationship with this person I've always wanted to have? Well, if they don't buy into that fantasy, you're not going to get it. And it's okay to decide that you no longer want to indulge in that fantasy. It's not a failure on anybody's part. It just demonstrates there's a poorness of fit in what we want for our lives. I've had to find surrogate dads, so to speak, not as replacements, but to teach me certain things that I wanted to learn that my dad just doesn't have it in himself. My dad is not really the touchy-feely, hands-on, compassionate, hey, buddy, come over here and talk to me about your day. Never that dad. So when I wanted to learn how to be more present and involved in my son's lives, I needed to go to other guys. And that's okay, because I don't care who you are in this world. When you become a parent, the heavens do not open up and download every jewel you're ever going to need to be a parent. So to think that you have to be the one-stop shop of wisdom and skills for your kid is arrogant. You need to introduce your child to a community. Hey, here are all the people you can learn from. Go ask them questions. You know, see if you can watch, see if you can apprentice something. Get out there and engage the world.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, something that even my conversation with my friends was that there's still parts of our parents that are amazing. Your father's a tradesperson. You know, my mother is funny and sarcastic. My father is very insightful as far as business. So those parts you can take and tell your kids about that. That's important. But yeah, surrounding them with your, what you don't want for your kids is for them to feel the same way that you feel about your parents. You're striving for betterment, and it's your end of story. It's your responsibility to help support them and surround them and yourself with what you want. You don't want that same kind of pattern. Well, change it then. It's so important. And you're right. It doesn't have to be dad and mom. It can be surrogates of many aunts and uncles or friends. It doesn't matter. But yeah, you don't have to totally forget mom and dad, because they did give you life. They did give you what they thought was the best in their world. And there's parts of them that are amazing. And you can highlight that, but you can insert other people to really make the difference in other ways. It's super important. I know, I have a 21-year-old.
Yeah, one strategy, my oldest is 20. One strategy I learned is something called positive blaming, where you find the gratitude in the mistakes other people's made that resulted in you having to take a specific action. So for my dad, I say, I blame you for emotionally abusing me when I was younger, because what I eventually learned was I'm good enough without your approval. That I don't need dad to say I love me for me to feel lovable. And that can take a while to get to, but if it wasn't for that impetus, you might not have had that journey.
Absolutely. Yeah, you really got to find a silver lining.
And I also thank him for his work ethic. The man was unstoppable. And now he's 78. He could probably still, well, me especially, kick my butt in a wrestling match because, I have MS and my body's getting useless. But I mean, anybody, he's got a black belt in judo. He was an Army Ranger. He's real, strong and silent type. But seeing his work ethic and his commitment to quality work, that is something that had an impact on me and helps keep my own standard high in terms of what I do. Because if you can kick butt, do not settle for mediocrity. And there were other areas of his life where, of course, he did settle, unfortunately, but not in that arena. So that's something I carry with me and I pass on to my boys. I tell them stories about me watching how hard my dad worked.
It's very important to highlight those things, because actually work ethic is, if you have to learn the hard way, that's a very difficult journey in life. It's a very great gift that any parent can give you to, by example, work hard. And, that's something that gives you more success than failures, as far as I'm concerned, because even if you fail, that work ethic that grit carries you through to the other side, right? So yeah, it's really an interesting balance with parents. And I think my other friends, their parents are getting in their later 70s, so there's becoming more issues of maybe some dementia, and so it's getting very complicated. And I think for anybody that's just feeling frustrated and sad and hopeless, that if it's replaying itself over and over, it's time to take a step outside and say, I need help from maybe somebody who's more equipped to, because you really want to move that needle, right? It's a hard place to be. It took me a long time to ask for help. That's why I'm on here encouraging people to pause and get help, because it would be nicer if you didn't have to go as long as I did, right? So spare yourself. But anyways, the upside is if you reach out, it's better than doing nothing.
And on the flip side of this, and we don't have to exhaust this, Jane, because this is an entirely different conversation. The flip side is, what if somebody else in your life is trying to grow and you're the one that's stuck, and you realize that you need to figure out how to be a support to that person instead of being the ongoing saboteur because of your own fears. So that's something that you want to strongly consider looking into as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what, when you want change, the funny thing happens. It doesn't really take as long as you conjure up. There's a, we're not, I think people, even my friends, or I don't know, in conversation, people will talk to me about, my goodness, like, how long did that take? Well, it obviously they're not changing anything, so they're not aware. But once you buy into what you're about to move, you move pretty quickly to get there, because you've marinated in it so long. I think you're sick of it. So it doesn't
Forget about how long it takes. Okay.
Yeah.
Forget about whether it's hard or not. Focus on what you envision the value of the transformation to be.
Absolutely.
Who are you going to be on the other side of this? What's your life going to look like? If you can make that huge enough and believe in it, is it worth doing the work? And if you can commit to that, you'll forget the time, because you will fall in love with the journey. You'll love those stones that you're turning, those layers you're peeling back. And it'll just become this, like an Indiana Jones of internal work. You'll just.
Yeah, it is. And actually, that's a good description. I think also what it prepares you for, in my friend's case, because aging parents, there becomes, it isn't just a Band-Aid. It becomes, oh, mom had a fall, it's an emergency or whatever. And so building that foundation of understanding where you're going with these new relationships and these boundaries, when things get really stressful, because they will. This is nothing compared to if parents get, more health issues, and it gets complicated, because in stress, the habits come back. And so if you can build that solid, foundation, it really supports you when things get more complicated in a better way, because it gets messy.
That is a very important point. And regression, when you become afraid, you pull back into that frightened kid that's looking out for all of those old dangers. What if this happens? What if that happens? Oh, it would be terrible. And you can begin to catastrophize. But it doesn't mean all of your hard work has suddenly been unraveled. It just means maybe you're experiencing a little overwhelm. You don't quite have the tools mastered the way you thought you did, or you need some new tools. And so this regression is an indication that, hey, I've got some work to do.
Yeah, it happens too. When your family, if there's a situation where you get called to the hospital and everybody arrives, or whatever your tribe is in your family, and everybody is in a bit of a, in a fear mode, because with parents, no matter how healthy it is or where you put your boundaries, you immediately go to, oh my gosh, like, I hope you go to, if they're going to, what happens if things change? What happens if one dies? So if you get a little more centered right now, when you get into those situations, it really, really does help. It gives you that, you recognize it and get centered. It might not be until you leave their house or the hospital, but it gets you centered quicker. And it really will invite more, funny enough, peacefulness into the whole. It's a strange thing to say, but it gives you a real peacefulness that you got this. It's crazy, it's terrible, and it's hard and it's sad, but I really encourage that. I've done it. So are my friends.
It's that grit you mentioned earlier, that capacity to move forward and continue to be resilient regardless of the hits that are thrown at you, because you realize that personal growth is not the smooth road. There are these peaks and these valleys and these climbs that you need to make, and some of them are harder than others, but it's to be expected that that's part of the journey, as opposed to the exception that you're supposed to question and think, man, why did I screw up? Why is this happening to me? No, this is part of the journey. This is the work.
Absolutely.
So, Jane, tell these wonderful, beautiful people how they can find you.
Well, I have a website, so you can go to janestewart.co, or you can come to my Facebook page and get to know me there as well. It's under Jane Stewart. So there's two avenues. I'm happy to, get to know me. I'm a high confidence coach, and that is very self-explanatory.
There's confidence and there's high confidence.
Yeah, well, the confidence really is a foundation to being an entrepreneur, and it really drives your actions and your business and your dreams you know, when you start to write all that out at the beginning of your journey, it really drives them. And if without that foundation, you can have a lot of stops and starts that are very frustrating. So that's what I lovingly coach entrepreneurs, mentor them to get to the confidence where it's continual action. And that doesn't mean perfection. And it certainly means that you're going to learn from things not working, but there's a lot more success in action. So yeah, that's where you can reach me.
Please follow Jane. She is so much fun. She does videos every single day. They're cute, they're funny, they're energetic. She'll even teach you how to grill corn on the cob. She has all these really neat tutorials. So yeah, she's just a big bundle of joy, and I totally adore her. Please follow her.
Thank you.
Jane, thanks for taking some time out of your morning. This was spontaneous, and we had an awesome conversation. Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
All right, you too.
Bye.